Welcome back to another episode of the Loco Fit Show, where we redefine what healthy means to you. I'm your host, Lauren Conlon, and this week I'm joined by my friend JP Dinnell. I'm so excited that he's on the podcast. He's a former Navy SEAL and the Chief Training Officer at Echelon Front, which is a leadership consultancy. I love that word, consultancy. I love you guys use that. So it's like my favorite thing. Consultancy. So they're a badass, I would say, the top leadership company. You guys have heard me talk about going to the muster, the leadership event. I talk to pretty much everybody that I meet about it. And so this is run by Echelon Front. So JP, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. How have you been?
Good. Today is like a million calls. So just I'm on that call train today.
Let's go.
Yeah. You know, we're both chatty Cathy over here. So give us a brief intro about yourself, the abbreviated version, because you've had a crazy life with a lot of stories. Give everybody a little bit of background.
Yeah. So this will be a good little testament to me shortening my my intro deeply.
Like, so I was born, actually, fun fact, we are almost birthday twins. Not that anybody asked.
Yep.
But
you mean nobody asked while we're recording, just the two of us? So strange.
Yeah, this is me. Welcome to our podcast.
Yeah. I born and raised Sacramento, California. Actually grew up in the same house that my dad grew up in. Went to like the same elementary school, same high school, which is cool. And then you get like some of the same teachers, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, a few of the teachers recognize the last name. So I had a really good upraising. My parents were still are, but we're very hard workers when we were young. My dad did construction and cooking, mostly construction. He did cooking whenever he needed to fill in the gaps here and there for seasonal work, or just when our family needed more money. And it's through my parents' hard work that I really kind of started to understand and see and embody the just the thought process that you can make excuses or you can make things happen, but you can't do both. And, my parents, they never made excuses. They always made things happen somehow for our family. And growing up in the 80s and 90s with your parents doing construction, my mom teaching step aerobics on the side when she can, at times it was, financially tight, like for a lot of people, And I know the last couple of years have been crazy for some people as well. So it's crazy how everything comes in cycles. We can talk about that at another time. But I was just very thankful for the childhood my parents provided us. We were always doing something fun, either going camping or just going for a road trip. I mean, gas was like 99 cents a gallon back then in California, which is crazy, So in Texas, it was probably like 10 cents a gallon or something like that. But which is where I live now. And I just, we would, drive from Sacramento up to Lake Tahoe or down to San Francisco to the Bay Area. And, we'd just do fun stuff. I was always very active. Our parents had us very active in sports. I mean, we were always doing multiple sports at a time. My parents met in a gym, so that was kind of cool. So they had that like common bond. And, I just loved playing sports. Ever since I was a little kid, I don't like to lose. I hate to lose. I hate losing more than I love winning. And
you're one of those.
I experienced that this weekend at a jiu-jitsu tournament. We'll talk about later, because there were some really good lessons that I learned from the leadership standpoint. But as I was reflecting on that, I also look back to when I was a kid, and man, I hated losing. Like, I hated losing. And my parents, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because my parents were able to help kind of like take that energy in that direction and use it the right way, and like push me to do stuff. And okay, cool, you don't like losing, well, you better go get your ass out there and work out in the gym, or hey, you better go do the reps. And so we're always doing extra stuff, because I'm not really good at anything. I'm good at working hard. I'll outwork most people. And that's where I bridge the gap on a lot of things. And so I'm very thankful for that example. My brother and my sister, two of my closest friends growing up, we're all very close in age. Growing up, my brother and I used to play Navy SEALs. So I wanted to be a Navy SEAL ever since I was a little boy. Fast forward till I'm in high school, graduating high school, my dad kind of challenges me, like, what are you going to do when you get done with high school? And I really didn't have any idea. I didn't have any direction. I thought I was going to be like a whitewater rafting guide and live on the river. That's what my best friend was doing. And in Northern California, like that's pretty legitimate. Like that's an amazing thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, you're up in the mountains, you're a single dude taking people whitewater rafting all the time. Like my buddy's life was awesome. And I was like, I want that life. And
Yeah.
my dad was like, yeah, maybe the military, like let's go something else. And which is funny because that buddy ended up joining the military after I did also, because I was like going to the Navy, kind of like inspired him. My little brother went in the Navy too. I had a lot of friends join the military after I joined. And I joined the Navy to become a Navy SEAL. So I got a contract to go try out. I left for boot camp September 5th, 2001, and 9/11 happened 6 days later when I was in boot camp. And there's a lot of crazy stuff that was going on, but it solidified the decision that I made. Like, hey, I wanted to serve my country. And, any service, I want to be very clear, any service to the military is awesome. And I hate when people are like, hey, man, thank you for your service. I'm like, hey, thank you for yours as well. Like, oh, I didn't do what you did. I hate that shit. It bothers me because it's like you signed your name to serve your country. You took a sworn oath, and whatever you did is awesome. Because if you weren't doing those other jobs, I wouldn't have been able to do my job. And you look at like what we did in the SEAL teams, if we didn't have our support personnel, zero chance we go out and do the missions that we do. And so it drives me crazy when people are like, they try to compare their service to others. And that's another thing for all the high speed operators out there. Don't be a dick, like don't like to other people and compare your service to theirs. Like yours is so much better. And I wish I didn't cuss because I'm trying not to. I want people from my church to listen to these podcasts and stuff. But at the end of the day, like, don't be a jerk, right? And that's one thing that bothers me. So I started off on a tangent, but that's just Lauren and JP talking anyways.
Yep.
What we do. But that's, my childhood was really good. And I'm glad that I had my parents that pushed me. Very athletic. I'm thankful for that. And, being a Navy SEAL was a dream of mine. And I was able to fulfill a dream because, went through boot camp, went to BUDS, made it through training. I didn't quit. I started with class 242. There's 222 guys on day one, and I was one of 28 of the originals that graduated. So it's pretty crazy, high attrition rate, a lot of guys that decided they don't want to be there, which is fine. It just means that that's not what they wanted to do with their life. And, I loved what I did in the military. Working for Jocko was incredible, obviously changed the trajectory of my life. Great leaders like Leif Babin, Seth Stone, other guys that can't really say their names because they're still in or they got out and they're not really, wanting to be in the spotlight for anything, but guys that really helped me when I was literally a kid, 18, 19 years old. I was 19 years old when I was checking in the SEAL teams, like 20 years old when I was going through the training. Oh, wow. It's just crazy to think about. I was 20. And, like these guys helped me become a young man in a very dynamic environment that most young people don't do well in because they're immature. And it's not the world that we need them operating in anyway. So I had to grow up real quick. Even though I look back and I think of some of the stuff I did, I'm like, oh man, I was a jackass sometimes. But I think that's part of
it. Right? We all were. And it's so crazy to think that they had such a profound impact on you at that point in your life. And then now you guys still work together in a completely different capacity, but similar, but very different. But still helping so many people just in a different way. So it's just, it really does come full circle, which I think is one of the coolest things, like from that whole story, that you guys worked together in that way. And then, you came back. So, so you're in the military, you're serving, and then what happens, kind of after? I guess we can get into that after, or do you want to do that now?
we can do whatever. My time in the military was awesome. I deployed to Iraq twice, Afghanistan once. So 3 combat deployments, which is not a lot compared to some of my buddies that, have 5, 6, 7, 10, 11 combat deployments, which is crazy. But the time that I spent overseas, I learned a lot. I'm thankful for that. I wish I would have had more deployments for sure. I liked deploying overseas. I like combat. I really enjoyed that type of lifestyle. And it was also for the camaraderie for the guys that I was with. Like I really enjoyed being around those guys. I believed in the mission. I believed in what we were doing. All the political BS aside, like I was like, oh, what were we doing? I don't care. Like I know what I did. And when you know that you helped women and children get education and access to education, who's going to tell me that wasn't worth it? That's worth it 100%. You know, when we deployed to Ramadi in 2006 with as Tasking and Bruiser, there was 4 to 5 thousand enemy fighters in that area. Like that's insane. Yeah, they had complete control over that city. They were flying their flag over the Capitol building. And I know you've heard a lot of this at the musters, but for those that haven't heard it, I just give a little cliff notes of Ramadi. I mean, you know, a lot of people said it was unwinnable. You know, the unit that we showed up that was at the tail end of their deployment, they'd been there for 14 months of straight combat, like combat every single day for 14 months, and they still only controlled a third of the city. They had over 300 wounded, 94 killed in action. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And we came in, and then a new Army unit came in with some new Marines that had this new strategy. And Jocko, Leif, and Seth was like, hey, what can we do to help you guys? Which was cool because our leadership realized, like, hey, there's only like 40 of us. There's 5,600 of them. Like, we're going to support them. And, you know, really subordinating their ego. And that's when I, you know, at a young age, I turned 23 right before we deployed to Ramadi. So I was still very young. I was our lead sniper, our point man, lead machine gunner. They put me in a position of leadership. So I was our leading petty officer in charge of a group of guys at a very young age. And what I saw from my leadership was humility of them going to these other units and saying, hey, here's what we can do. Here's our capabilities. What do you want from us? How can we help you guys? Hey, what type of missions are you guys doing? Oh, we can help there. We can help there. We can help there. Instead of like the typical special forces, Navy SEAL, Green Beret, Army Ranger, I'm better than you, you're going to support me BS mindset. Our leadership was like, hey, can we help you guys? Cool. Oh, this is what we can do. And it was really cool. And that attitude was contagious. And that's why I'm sharing this is that's good leadership. And that attitude from our leadership came all the way down. Now, almost everybody bought into it. There's always going to be a few that are like, we shouldn't be doing these missions because it wasn't the typical Navy SEAL mission that we were doing. But that's okay. What are you going to do? Sit on the sidelines and be like, oh, cool. Hey, we're not going to go do that. No, I want to go hunt the enemy down. And that's what we started doing. And it was really cool being able to help support them. And, you know, for me as a young individual in a leadership position, being able to see my leadership subordinate their ego and say, hey, what can we do to help? And then explaining to us, hey guys, this is what we're doing. This is why we need to help. How do you want to do it? So now they're just driving ownership. I'm 23 years old and they're like, hey, JP, how do you want to go support? And I'm like, let me get back to you with the plan. And now I'm coming up with a plan and I have 100% ownership. And I'm doing the same thing with the guys. I'm like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. Hey, what do you think we should be doing? And they're like, this. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do that together. And now we all are bought in. And it was really cool to be able to see that in Ramadi. And that's where the principles that we teach now at Echelon Front were driven from. We came back from that deployment, which, by the way, again, everyone was saying it was unwinnable. It was pure chaos. And there were no forms of education for women and children because the enemy fighters had complete control. And I know that's crazy. Like, we live in America, or hopefully people in different countries are listening to this, and you probably have equal opportunities for education for women and children. Now, there are still some places in the world where that's just not the case, which is crazy to me. It infuriates me. And that was a reality there. And I want to say it was about 15 months after we left Ramadi, the first all-girls school was established. And it's just, I know, I love it. You know, I'm
so badass.
Of twin daughters, and I'm like, dude, that's so amazing. Like, these little girls were able to have education, and you can't take that away from them. That's what's cool. I know things have shifted overseas again, but think about that. From 2006 until last year, 15 years of education. You're not taking that back. That's changing generations, which is awesome. So to know that we had a small piece of that, well worth it. And you know, we helped do a lot of other really cool stuff. Unfortunately, there was a heavy cost to that. We lost guys, and there's a lot of guys that were wounded and killed in the battle. Like almost 500 guys were wounded. 98 were killed in action, while the 11D was there. So it was crazy. We lost guys in our task unit. A lot of guys were wounded in our task unit. But we had a lot of lessons that we learned, and when we came back and Jocko took over training, we implemented all those lessons to better prepare our guys for combat. And the trajectory of the training on the West Coast drastically shifted and changed, which was really cool. And then guys were able to go overseas and do some awesome stuff. I deployed to Afghanistan a few years later, and it was cool to be able to, continue to learn and see different things. And then, I decided that my time in the Navy was done. I just needed to close that door, because I was going back and forth, and I needed to fully commit to getting out and trying to make a marriage work and be there for Amanda and the kids. And at the time when I came in the picture, Aiden was only 4 years old. Amanda was pregnant with twins, and I'm like, I got to get out, And for me, it was the right decision. And for some guys, like, they stayed in that same type of situation, and it was able to work for them. And that's cool. For me, just, Amanda needed to be in Mississippi. She couldn't leave Mississippi, or she didn't want to leave Mississippi. Right. And I had to respect that. And it was a right decision. So I got out, I moved to Mississippi. So, you're born and raised in Sacramento, California. You have the Sierra Nevadas, the foothills, my grandparents' property, which is 5 acres up in the mountains, going to the ocean all the time, stationed in San Diego for almost 12 years. Like, you have the canyons, the mountains that I'm racing my
so beautiful
bike.
there.
It's just gorgeous, right? And then you move to North Mississippi, near Memphis, Tennessee.
Gorgeous. I've never been, so actually I'm not going to say anything because I don't know what Mississippi. Haven't been, so I can't comment.
I'll just say this:
it's not San Diego.
No, it was a rough transition. And there's a rough transition for a lot of different things. It's a small town. I don't know anybody. Actually, it's funny. That's not accurate. So I redact that statement. When I got out and I lived there, I realized that Amanda and I actually had like a handful of common friends. And it was from people that I would just meet being out there for work all the time. And you and I are the same, social butterflies. And it was funny. Like, I remember, I was getting a new phone. Amanda broke her phone, so I got a new phone, give her my old phone, and she's like syncing up all the contacts, and there's a lot of like duplicate contacts. And it was mine, where she'd go to call her buddy, and it would be his name, Jonathan, or it was mine, which was his first and last name and the notes of where I met him and what I knew about him and everything in there. And so it was like we had like all these common friends, male and female, which was it was comical, just.
And I need to start doing that, putting notes with people, like, because sometimes you'll be like,
oh no, yeah. So you have on an iPhone, you'll have the first name, last name, and then underneath it, that's usually where I put the detailed notes.
Of course you do.
For podcast purposes, your nickname for a while will be redacted.
For podcast purposes, in case your church friends listen. Yeah, we had an interesting meeting. Let's just say it was a very me introduction.
It was hilarious, but for a while, like, that's what the notes was in there. So and so met at First Forum Conference. She's a speaker, right? And I was just like, I remember you spoke before I spoke, and cool, awesome. And we became like really good friends, and then you and Amanda became really good friends, and like we've been really close friends since. And so it's just funny, like, and recently I was like, oh, I could probably change that. Like, I don't need that description to remember who I'm like trying to reach out to. But yeah, so small town Mississippi, which I met some really good friends right away that I'm still like close friends with to the day. One of the guys helps me on the FTXs. His name is Joe Pass. He's an awesome dude. He's a stud. He's actually going into the military now, which is cool. He's one of my MMA coaches, so I had these guys like Zach Underwood, Jake Underwood, Andy Europe, Teddy Holder, Joe Pass, that were my coaches for MMA. But then they also knew some of my former teammates, Aaron Vaughn, who had been killed on a helicopter crash. Zach and Jake knew him from school, and it was in a small town, Union City, Tennessee, right? And so it's just like a lot of like crazy things. And I just, that was really cool. I think it was good for me. But then all of a sudden now doing sale, it was good and bad. The small town was cool because that kind of forced me to slow down some stuff in my life, because I'd never been in a small town. I'd never operated in that realm before. And then, then you're doing sales at a financial company and in the Memphis, Tennessee area. So I'm like putting on suit and tie or dress clothes every day, sitting in traffic to go to an office, to sit in a cubicle, to make cold calls, to go on sales trips, to come back. Man, it was rough. Now, it wasn't bad. Let me be very clear. It wasn't bad. Like, I was learning a lot. I enjoyed what I was able to do. I learned a lot about business, which was really cool. I learned a lot of good stuff and bad stuff about people and business. And I was like, oh, there's some shady mofos out there. That's crazy to me. Laura, I was so naive. I grew up, very strong, strict Christian household, which I'm thankful for, because I would have been in
Mhm.
prison if not, right? Like, oh, I'm being dead serious.
Definitely.
Like
Definitely.
100% prison or dead, had I not had that guidance from my parents and being in church, and grandmothers and grandparents and aunts and uncles. We're all very close growing up, like very, very close family. And church every Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, all that stuff. Did Christian Boy Scouts. Like, it was very good for me. But I was also so naive, because then you go in the military and then you only see the military. So I had that upraising, only military, and I get out and I'm like, oh, people like just make up fake invoices to get funded and you can't persecute them. Yeah, we worked at a financial company where we bought receivables that had a delay to pay to advance money. So let's say you have a trucking company,
Mhm.
Lauren's trucking company, and you go deliver a load to Walmart. They're going to pay you $1,000. Well, you have to wait 60 to 75 days to get paid. You give me that invoice. It's called factoring. And I'm like, cool, I'll give you $900 today. I'll wait to get paid. Once I get the other once I get the $1,000, I'm going to give you, depending on the volume, I'll give you, of that $100 left, I'm going to give you 70, and I'm going to keep 30 for that. And you're like, okay, that's fair, right? You're getting money right now, boom, boom, boom. So you'd advance 90 to 95%. We would keep that reserve. We'd get paid, and whatever the reserve was, we'd give back to you minus our fee. So it helps a small company grow. So for me, it made sense. I was like, oh, cool, this is a good thing. This is a good company. It makes a lot of sense. But it was crazy to me to see the illegal stuff that companies were doing and how just common that was. And I'm like, and then I saw like the internal shadiness within the company of people
Yeah.
just like backstabbing each other and like saying one thing and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. And it wasn't the whole company. It was just a few. You would see that a
Mhm.
little bit, and I'm like, and I
But that
remember,
shit's not going to fly, like, you know, on a SEAL team or anything like that.
no,
Like, you're
I
just
mean,
not
there's
going to
a
do
little
that.
bit,
You're going
yeah,
to,
yeah,
it's
for the
human
most,
nature, but that gets squashed, and it's not like this
yeah,
dynamic of like clickiness and
yeah, it
backstabbing.
was,
Like, that's not going to work.
yeah. You might have some drama, but you're not backstabbing guys in the SEAL teams. That shit ain't happening. And so it was
It
just for me.
can't.
I was
I
like,
mean,
oh my gosh, I'm like, this is crazy. People are crazy. And so then I learned like, oh, you can't do a deal over handshake anymore, because there's a few times I did that with some other guys, like handshake deal, like for some business consulting that I was doing, and then nope, turn out, I got screwed for thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, it was kind of crazy, and I learned a lot. The sales guys I worked with were great. Some of the owners were awesome. They really taught me a lot and really mentored me, which I'm forever grateful to those guys and gals for that, for sure. And then I decided like, hey, I need to transition. I need to do something that's fulfilling to me. I started doing my own consulting, um, filling in the gaps wherever I could. I was an extra on Transformers 5. I was playing a Navy SEAL, so it was a big stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was cool, like to be able to do that. I was teaching shooting. I was sighting in people's hunting rifles to make extra money wherever I could. And then things financially started getting like really, really, really tight. And that's when I was like just doing anything and everything I could. I started working at Marco's Pizza to deliver pizzas. One of my good buddies opened a place up, and he needed drivers. He needed a good people that were going to actually show up. I mean, at the time I'm in my I'm in my mid 30s. I have a family and I have a nice truck. Of course I'm going to show up to work, like
Yeah.
I was doing construction. I mean, I was doing everything. I was working for my landlord to rebuild his fences for different rental properties, to like, hey, if I do these jobs, will you offset my rent? He'd be like, yeah, you do these jobs, I'll buy the materials, you do the work, I'll take 3 months off of your rent. I'm like, done. Like, cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was straight hustling anything and everything I could. I was selling t-shirts at MMA fight shows, just everything.
Everything.
And then the opportunity came to see what Jocko and Leif were doing, and that was a complete godsend thing. Seth knew that I, was struggling with some stuff. I really wanted to get back into the military, regular Navy. I was having some issues getting back into the SEAL teams. So there's a little bit of issue there, because a regular Navy said I had too many tattoos and too many combat related injuries. Well, I had all these tattoos while I was in. It wasn't an issue. And the combat related injuries, where the hell do you think I got those from? Oh, when
Yeah.
I was in combat in the Navy, I was so pissed off. And but that, you talk about the bureaucracy of a big
Yeah.
organization. It was so stupid. And so Seth knew I was struggling with that. Jocko was trying to help me out. And then that's when Jocko was like, now I was reaching out to Jocko about once a month saying, hey, I need some, is there anything I can do to help you? Is there any, I know the mentor doesn't seek out the mentee. Is there anything you need? Can I help support? I can do sales. I do whatever you guys need me to do. And, finally came, he's like, hey, we have this event called the Muster. This is the first one, right? He's like, we have this event in San Diego. Come check it out. Just come check it out and see what we have going on. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go and I check it out, and I meet Jamie Cochran, who was helping out on the operations side. I hadn't seen Leif for a while, so it was great seeing him. Actually, last time I saw Leif was when Chris Kyle had been murdered, and I was at Chris Kyle's funeral. It was the last time I saw Leif. And so that was 2013. This is now 2016. So it'd been a while, and it was awesome when I saw what Jocko and Leif had created. Now, I had already read Extreme Ownership, so I read the book and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm all in. When I saw the event, I was like, holy crap, this is crazy.
This is different.
Yes, yep, you're right. I was like, this is different. There's nothing like this. I was a part of this, and so when you realize like, wow, I helped a little bit to do some of this, it was pretty cool. And then I was like, I want to be a part of this at a higher level if possible. So then Jocko had me on his podcast, and he mentioned about me coming on board the team. And, it was really cool because afterwards he told me, he's like, hey, I don't know what this will call. He's like, you might have one event over the next year, or you might have 50. We're not sure. He's like, to be honest, he's like, nobody's calling requesting JP Dinnell. And I'm like, I know that. But he goes, Leif and I are having to turn down gigs because we're too busy. He goes, and we're going to increase our price, and that there'll be people for you as long as you're okay with that. I'm like, I'm cool with being the second option. Like, thank you for the opportunity. But I took it very serious. Like, I took it as like, I'm the first person that they're bringing on board.
Yeah.
So I took it as if I had been there since day one, and I was just obsessed with making sure that my brief and all my stuff was dialed in. I mean, when people are like, oh, I went all in, I can honestly say I went all in with this. And I know a lot of people use that term and they don't really know what it means. And this is something like, I mean, Amanda can attest to this. In addition to the other work and all the other stuff I was doing to try to make ends meet, I was still rehearsing my 1 hour keynote 6 to 8 hours a day. Like that is no exaggeration. 6 to 8 hours a day of rehearsing and tweaking and listening to myself, doing it in front of a mirror, watching my body language, like taking notes, videoing it. Like, I mean, I was like, I've got to have this shit dialed in, because you see Jocko and Leif, like, okay, yeah, people can't afford them, but when I come deliver the message, it's going to be the same. Like this is not going to there when it comes to the delivery of the message, there's not going to be a discrepancy. The only discrepancy is what you can afford. You're getting the same. And it was really cool because when I did my first rehearsal in front of Jocko and Leif, I had everything set up. Amanda and the kids left the house. I had like boxes stacked up on this like little TV tray, because we lived at the time in a little two-bedroom house in Mississippi. All three kids were in one room. We had no kitchen because that was the office set up. Like it was tight. And so we had TV trays that we ate dinner off of, because we didn't have a kitchen table to sit as a family. And I remember I had this TV tray set up with boxes set up on it and my laptop so that it was head level, so that I could be standing up when I gave the presentation like I would. And I got done with it, and it was like an hour presentation, and I hit right at an hour. I mean, it was like, boom, I had everything. And then we did some mock Q&A, and it was cool. Like, I want to make sure I say this and my intent comes off correctly, but it was humbling when Leif goes, we can tell you put a lot of time into this. He goes, you did a really good job. And for me to hear that, I was like, yes, like that's all I wanted. Like, I just wanted them to be like, hey, you've put in the work. Good job. Let's make some tweaks though, because we can always make things better, as you and I have talked plenty of times about in all aspects of life. And it was really cool to be able to have that confirmation of okay, I did the right thing. And it goes back to when I was a kid. If you put in the time and you work and you work and you work and you work, you'll get where you need to be. Most people aren't willing to put in that much work. And you got to think, this was for weeks and weeks and weeks. I was doing these rehearsals. I was only able to go see Leif do a gig and Jocko do a gig. No, I'm sorry. I did the muster. I went and saw Jocko do a full day workshop for fire department in LA. I saw Leif do a keynote with Q&A in Fort Worth, Texas. And then Jocko do a keynote with a little sidebar Q&A session with leaders in Nashville. And so those were the three things I saw. And so I was doing all my rehearsals, and those were the three things I saw. And then I do my video rehearsal, and then I went and did my first solo gig on December 14th and 2016. Keynote with Q&A by myself, solo, right? And it was just cool to be able to do that prep. And I mean, that was, over 6 years ago, just over 6 years ago. And now, as we grew, giving keynotes and full day workshops and half day workshops, and, Dave Burke came on board shortly thereafter me. And, we've just been growing out this company, Jocko, Leif, Dave, Jamie, and myself. Jamie's now our chief operations officer. She's one of our leadership instructors.
She's amazing.
Jamie's phenomenal.
And
Dave Burke, I mean, he's just Dave Burke. He's just an amazing human being, right? and for me to be able to be a part of that executive leadership team is just incredible. We started building out all of our field training exercises, which were very impactful, very Jocko and Leif say it's the most impactful form of training that we have, because it's all hands-on, stress-induced, scenario-based leadership training. And it's incredible. And so grew that. And then, part of what we do is we teach people how to build teams and to lead. Well, we do what we teach, and we've been able to build out teams. And, Cody Gandy came on board, and he's been helping build out all the FTXs. And now I got promoted, he got promoted, I got promoted, he got promoted again. And so now he's the director of experiential leadership training. And now I'm our chief training officer. So the FTXs are underneath me. All of our first responder geared, so the roll calls, which is specifically for first responders, are under me. The council, the battlefield review, and instructor development and training facilities, and it's just it's crazy, right? It's just crazy to be able to have that opportunity. So I'm very thankful for where I was and where I'm at, because I mean, there was one time, I mean, I know you know this, I didn't get into the details because I don't think that's really the purpose of this podcast, but just for people listening, like, hey, if you're going through some hard times, tough times, tight times, you just got to keep working, and you got to be creative with what you're doing. And you can't just get sucked into like, oh, I can only do this. I can only do this. I can only do this. Because if I would have believed those lies, I wouldn't have been able to get out of that hole that I was in. I mean, there was one time, I mean, I remember one time, like a check I was given from a guy that owed me a lot of money bounced, and it put us negative $2,700. Like, you don't have any grace. Like when you're negative, you don't have like, oh, let me pull from savings. Let me use our credit card. Credit cards were maxed out. We had zero in savings, and now we're $2,700 negative. What do? You can't do anything. Literally, you cannot do anything. And so I've been there. And then I've been to where it's like, cool, let's check. Oh, we have 17 cents in our account. Check. All right. Well, that'll at least my card will swipe at the gas station with 17 cents in there because they don't know how much you're taking out. So I can fill up our vehicle and put the account negative, but at least we'll have gas to be able to go do. I mean, that's what we were doing for a while, using gift cards to eat for the family, going over to Amanda's parents, which are a huge blessing, you know, and them like cooking and letting us eat there with them, and then us taking the leftovers home so we can eat them the next day. And it's just, I've been there, you know, I've been there.
Yeah.
And 6 years ago, I was delivering pizzas to help make ends meet. And now it's just completely different. And I know not everyone's going to have the opportunity that I have. And I know my opportunity is unique and very thankful for it. But you don't have to stay where you're at. You can put in the work, you know, and if you're willing to put in the work. And that's the thing. I've talked to Jocko and Leif, and I'm always like, dude, I'm super thankful. And Leif and I were just talking this Monday. I was down in the outside Austin area where he's at and our headquarters is. And he goes, JP, he goes, you took the ball and ran with it, though. He goes, you took action. He goes, nothing was given to you. You know, we gave you an opportunity, but nothing was given to you. And him and I have talked about this a few times, and Jocko has as well. And so, I mean, that's the other thing is like, if you have opportunities in front of you, go. If you don't, go find them, go make them, go develop them, because they're out there 100%. And I know you've seen this in your business and everything that you do. I mean, nothing's coming to you. You've got to go out there and work for it. You got to create it. You got to develop it. You have to maintain it. You have to duplicate it. You have to do all these things. And it's hard, but
That's such a good point, like to really hone in on, like most things aren't just going to show up for you, right? I mean, you might get that chance every once in a while, right? Where something you just kind of naturally fall into it, or whatever it might be. But yeah, it's even like going to things, right? Oh my God, that's so cool. You got to go there. And it's like, I paid to be there. I flew there. I sacrificed my time. You know, like it wasn't like I said no to certain things so I could say yes to this. And I went out there and I did this. And it can be as small as like even like your daily interactions. I think a lot of times we think it has to be these like huge robust things, like I'm going to take out a loan and go back to school, which if you want to do that, like absolutely, like I'm
cool.
1000% for that. But it could
Make
even
sure
be the small.
make sure it's for something that you can use, though. Like my sister to
Yes,
become a doctor. That was a good investment, right?
that made sense. But like even in small interactions, like on a day-to-day basis, like you can get more out of everything that you're doing by interacting with people, having good conversations, reflecting on things, learning good things and bad things. Like you were talking about that job in Memphis, like there was a lot of good things you took from that, but you also took a lot of bad things. And that's such a huge thing. Like a lot of times we only look at these negative scenarios or situations as this was just a negative. But what did I learn from this? I didn't like how this person said that. I didn't like how this operated. I don't like this body language. Like there are so many things that we can take just on a daily basis. And like those things are not going to come to you. Like you have to be the person who goes after them. You have to be the person who sits and reflects and thinks on things. And it is so crucial. It doesn't matter who you are, you know, and like you said, there's going to be different opportunities presented to people. But you're going to have to honestly make most of them. Reach out to that person, go to that event, talk to that stranger, like take 5 minutes to reflect on something that was like
Yeah.
a bad conversation. Like, I mean, I'm so guilty of this for so much money. Oh, whatever. You just shove it down forever. And then you're like, oh, I won't deal with it. And then it like blows up and you're like, all right, well, I could have avoided this by simply taking 10 minutes to reflect on that,
Yep.
you know, and those are, you know, a lot of those mistakes that we make.
Yeah, and you know from the training that you've been a part of, And like what we do at the FTX is that's a debrief, right?
Mhm.
And so you need to do these like internal debriefs for yourself each day of like, okay, hey, what was good? What was bad? What lessons did I learn from that? And you need to be doing them with your team as well. And what you're talking about is doing a debrief. You're doing an
Yeah.
assessment of the situation that you're in,
Mhm.
because just because I was given that opportunity with Jocko Leif didn't mean I was going to be able to get to where I'm at right now. I actually had to put in the work. I had to take those opportunities, like you were just saying. I had to have the conversations. I had to do all those things that you were just saying. And one of the things that I guess I just naturally do because of what we did in the SEAL teams is I'm constantly, excuse me, assessing and evaluating.
Mhm.
Okay, how was that conversation? How was that meeting? How was this training? Always debriefing so
Mhm.
that we can pull the good, pull the bad.
Yeah.
What are the major lessons learned? What do we need to tweak? And you just go from there.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the big misconceptions too about leadership in general, right? People hear leadership, or even they hear maybe the Echelon Front message, or they listen to some of Jocko's podcasts, whatever it might be, and they think, "Oh, that's really cool," but like, I'm not in the military, or
That's not for
I'm
me.
not a CEO, like this
Yep.
doesn't matter to me. This doesn't affect me. But it's like, no, all of these things, like leadership is
Yes.
the absolute crux, even if it's just for you,
Yep.
like, and that's why it is one of the absolute hardest things. Like, it is not something, I mean, some people, would be more natural born leaders in some instances, but I would even say people who maybe have some of those proclivities to be a leader, there is still so much reflection and work that needs to go into just leadership in general. And even if it is just leading yourself, but you're leading yourself, if you are leading a team at work, you know what I mean? If you are leading your family, your community, like just how, like, everything is about leadership. But even if you only want to think about it in terms of yourself, that is still a really crucial part, because if you don't have that, like, internal dialogue and that, like, sense of direction, you know how easy it is to just kind of fall off the proverbial cliff of like,
Yep.
I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, and
Or I'm
that's
doing
what.
bad things, not even just
Yeah,
nothing, I'm doing bad stuff.
yeah. That's one of the, yeah. Geez, that's one of
Yeah.
the barriers to extreme ownership is this isn't for me. My problems are unique. I wasn't in combat. I didn't. The principles of leadership are universal. Extreme ownership is universal. Extreme ownership is it's just doing the right thing, and that's the problem that a lot of people have is their ego, right? Their ego gets in the way and they play the victim card, and it's unfortunate, but it's it's one of those things where if you're not willing to humble yourself and look at stuff with an open mind, you're not going to have any progression anyways. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you can't humble yourself, if you're not willing to look at stuff with an open mind, you will not progress in life. You're not going to. And people have to be willing to do the hard things and do the things that make them uncomfortable, and be willing to like look at themselves and do, like you're saying, those honest self-assessments and be like, okay, I'm not doing well here. I'm not doing well here. I'm doing good here. And then figure out what you need to do moving forward. But it is comical that the amount of people that have some resistance to what we do at Echelon Front, because they're just like, oh, it's just they're military, they're all a bunch of robots. They just, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, no, one, have you never met anybody in the military? Because
Yeah.
like that's just not even close. Like even like the high level performance guys, they're not robots. They're just disciplined. And
Hmm.
you look at people that are successful, high level CEOs, all the way down to low level employees that are very good at what they do. It's discipline. Discipline is what is that trait that makes people successful and build and have the ability to bring things to that next level. And I just it's frustrating that we still are trying to figure out how to like break down that barrier of that misconception,
Hmm.
because I hate that it holds people back from um, actually listening to the principles and
Hmm.
applying the principles that you and I both know firsthand. Like if you apply these principles, they're going to change your life for the better.
Yeah.
It's just going to make, and it's not, and these aren't principles that we made up. It's not like we invented these things. These have been around since read the Bible. They're in there, right? It's like
Yeah.
in the beginning of time, they're in there. Read any, anything from in history, it's there. It's just framed a little bit different because we had a different outlook. And here's the thing that we try to reiterate: if we could use these principles in the most chaotic place of the world, the most dangerous city in the world, where people are saying it's unwinnable, if we could apply these principles, and when I say we, not Tasking and Bruiser, but we as Americans, right? It's what the soldiers, Marines, and SEALs were doing together. If we can do that, why can't you do it in your job? Why can't you do it in your business that you're trying to start? Why can't you do it in your marriage or your family? Oh, it's because you're lazy and you're lacking discipline. That's all it is. And it's just, these things will give you that freedom.
Yep. And so if you were to say when someone needs to maybe implement like, okay, let's break this down. Okay, I understand now. I need some more leadership in my life. Like, where would be a place that someone could start? I guess presuming we're just going to focus on them as the individual first and foremost.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, for what I do and who I'm working with, I would say go read Extreme Ownership. Go buy Extreme Ownership. You can't afford to buy Extreme Ownership, download Jocko's podcast and start listening to Jocko's podcast. It's free. If you really want to figure, and maybe you're like, oh, those podcasts are really long. I agree, they are. I'm still getting caught up on some. Full disclosure. Sorry, Jocko.
They're long as hell, but we love you.
Yeah, they are, but they're really good. And if you listen to them at 1.5 to double speed, it's good to go. You get used to it.
My brain cannot. I do not know how people do that. Oh my god, that bothers me.
You're actually like your brain is able to reprogram itself. I promise. I listen to a podcast at 1.5 speed. It sounds normal, but it's only podcast, and it knows the difference between podcast and music.
Yeah.
Music is normal. Podcast, boom. If let's say you and I are driving in the car together, and you're like, whoa, this is way too fast. I bring it down to regular speed. I'm like, oh my god, Jocko had a stroke. What's wrong with him? Because like my brain is used to him and everybody else speaking at 1.5 speed. So the way I listen to it, it sounds like he's talking like this. I remember the first time. It was a new. It was a new podcast that he had. It was at a regular speed, and when it started off, I got really concerned. I'm like, did he have a stroke? Like, what's wrong with him? Like, I thought something was wrong.
Texting Leif immediately.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my god, the Godfather's going down. And so no, I was just, but podcast, I'm used to it. And then I can listen to them at double speed and it's now good to go. But anyways, yeah, if you can't, cool. You can, your brain gets used to it. I promise. Just start at 1.25 and then 1.5 and you'll be good. But so to answer your question, Jocko's podcast, it's free. If you want to find some in there that are like specific for business within the Jocko podcast platform, there's podcasts that he does with Dave called The Debrief. And those are specific to business. So it's Dave Burke and Jocko Willink talking about companies that we've worked with. Now we redact names, we change it to where you literally have no idea who we're talking about, but we keep the principles and the solutions pure. And those are about 45 minutes. They're amazing. I tell every like newer person that's working with us, hey, you start listening to the Debrief podcast. Those are the ones you have to listen to. I mean, they're absolutely amazing. So start there, start listening more Jocko's podcast. Maybe for once a week, you don't go buy a cup of coffee and you save that money. And in 6 weeks, you can buy Extreme Ownership. I mean, I'm not being a smart ass. I'm just saying, like, if you can't afford it, maybe you just change something small. Maybe it's Christmas coming up. So you ask, hey, could you buy me Extreme Ownership, Dichotomy of Leadership, and Leadership Strategy and Tactics? If you have those 3 books, and I have them right here, and you can see how worn out they are. I mean, this book is incredible. I mean, and then, Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership. I mean, these books are They're very valuable. I mean, mine are filled with underlines and highlights and
Yeah, of course.
everything else like this. But I mean, these books are incredible. I mean, you just look at like the contents and you know, like they have like foundations of where he got all this stuff, core tenets, one like being capable to and ask for help. That's hard for a lot of people, right? Building trust in
I'm like,
relationship.
I feel attacked.
You're like, you looked away. I was like, Lauren, I'm not attacking you right now. You're gonna be okay. I feel attacked. Building trust in relationships. Up the chain of command, down the chain of command, trust and decentralized command, earning influence and respect, taking extreme ownership of everything, like taking preemptive ownership of what that means, taking ownership when you're being blamed, leading from the rear, don't overreact, I don't care, everyone is the same, but everyone is different, let nature work, isolation as a leader. I mean, that's just literally half a page of all these things that he has in here. And it's just maneuvers, using leadership to teach and build, fixing a negative attitude, teaching humility, building or rebuilding confidence, building high-level team players, stress relief. When the boss wants all the credit, what do? How do you implement punishment? I mean, it's just anything you have.
If anybody can just pick up one habit, like please go buy a few books. That's extreme ownership.
Just start reading.
Extreme ownership is probably one of my top like 3 recommended books. People like they know, hey, what book? Everybody already knows that's going to be on there, and it's because of how impactful it is. And there is the story, and then the practicality, and it's really easy to understand. It's not written in a way that is over your head for any reason. It's not really, and you can apply these things immediately, and it's been really fun to like, I work with clients, and a lot of my clients have other positions that are, whether they are in school. Like my one client who read the book, she's like, yeah, you recommended it to me, and she's doing her MD and PhD at the same time, and she also runs a research lab. So she basically was like, I use the principles of this book to help coordinate like the lab, and it's like that's just so like hearing that kind of feedback is just so like that's
so
everything.
rad.
You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, that one person can then impact other people. So like being able to read just anything. And again, when you read books, it's kind of like taking stuff. You take good things, you take things that are like, oh, it's whatever, and then, oh, I really love this part. But that allows you to reflect and then dive more into other books and other theories. And if you can do that and then take some type of time to debrief, right, yourself. That's why I've been so big on journaling this year. Like journaling is one of the biggest things that I've added for myself this year. And it is absolutely like so critical. And I don't get it done every day, but there are certain days where I do it, more than others, or certain weeks rather than I do it more than others. And
I
just having it has been one of the best things, especially for people like us who have so much. Like I have 8,000 things in my head at all times that are all competing. A lot of times it's just crazy shit going on in there, but like, it is just so useful to get that out. And I feel like I'm getting better at communicating also just because of writing thoughts more and becoming more articulate in that way.
Yes, that's actually one of the things Jocko was saying, because I was talking with him about, I don't remember the specific conversation that prompted it, but somehow we got down the road to like just being a better speaker and being more articulate. And he said, start writing every day. I was like, okay, check.
Yeah, but yeah.
So I don't journal like you're talking about. I need to, but I type. Like I write, I type. I just been capturing stories that I remember from my time in the military. And people are like, are you writing a book? I'm like, no, I'm not writing a book. Just stop asking that stupid question. But it helps me just, I have a thought come in, I just start typing. I'll do it on flights. Well, because one of the guys was sitting next to me and I was on a flight and I was just typing, and I'm not trying to hide my screen. He looks over, he's like, bro, you writing your book? And I'm like, I am not writing a book. He got all fired up. Like I was like,
bro,
dude, I'm not, like, nobody wants that book. I'm not writing it.
I think it'd be a great book, but we just write like a fever dream book of like just random thoughts and like sprinkle in some leadership. Jocko's like, we are specifically not publishing this book because these people are assets. These two are not allowed to have a book in our publishing company.
Oh, that would be That'd be crazy.
But no, writing, yeah, I would say that, creating discipline is going to come from habits. But there has to be certain behaviors in place. It's not enough to say, I want to have more discipline. Like everybody wants to have, like, nobody's like, I want to have less ownership and less discipline in my life. I mean, maybe some people say that, but most people want more of that. But
Yeah.
it's like, how do they actually accomplish that? And the behaviors that we have every single day are what create our habits. So
Yep.
reading, writing are absolutely essential. What are, and this is another, I think, misconception of people who, see maybe your guys' message or just you in particular, oh yeah, I used to be in the military or what, like, oh, you're a robot, you're this machine, like everything's easy for you because of, you were so dialed in. And it's like, that's very incorrect. Also, the reason that you're operating this way is because of those habits that have turned into behaviors. So
Yep.
what are some of the things outside of, obviously reading and writing that really ground you, whether it's physical, mental, family, like whatever it is, like what are
Yeah.
some things that just kind of keep you in check? Because there's always that line of like, okay, like it's not just like we said, it's not just like, oh, hey, I'm not doing good things right now. It's like I could be doing bad
Oh,
things. So,
for
so
sure.
what are those things that keep you in check?
I would say like current day, my faith has been big, like just really trying to get that squared away and just more just dialed in with my focus with my relationship with God. Because I grew up in church, like I told you, like and it was good. And and I know some people that grew up in church have church hurt. Like that's a real thing, right? Just where like the spirit of religion is a bad it's a bad thing. It's like a lot of people have these bad experiences, or just the church is not a relationship with God. Let's be clear on that right now. And so I'm thankful that I never experienced that. There was never any issues with the church growing up. I never saw like anything that I was like, oh, that's wait, what? It was never like that. It was always a really good environment. So I had a good base and foundation. But like as an adult, like I'm gonna be, I'm 39. I'll be 40 in March. Married, 3 kids, and just trying to like focus on like what my priorities need to be. And for me, as a man, it's being a good Christian man is having that good relationship with God, my wife, and my kids, and understanding where my priorities are. And here's the thing: I struggle with this every single day. I struggle with it every single day. There's temptations that come in, there's thoughts that come in, there's frustrations that come in, there's all these things that are like literally constantly like knocking at the door. Knocking at the door. And I gotta be careful that I just don't open up the door, because if I open up that door,
Oh, going in.
oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
and
we're
then it's
going
all,
in.
yeah, this is no, I didn't want this party, like stop, dang it, everybody get out. And so but it's just like, you and we've known each other for a while, and we've actually had some like pretty close like conversations on just frustrations and struggles that I've had, just with just staying on the path, right? And just like getting on that path. And it comes to discipline, it's just understanding what you really want. If it's important, you'll make it a priority. And one of the things I say is you're not allowed to say I don't have time. You have to say it's not a priority. Like last night, early morning, the last couple of days, FTX, up at 4:15 in the morning, full day. And like Tuesday night, I didn't want to, honestly, I didn't want to work out. I was smoked. I even tried to justify not working out because I was looking at my watch. I'm like, dude, my total calories burned for the day are 3,900. I think I'm good. You know what I mean? And it's easy for you to believe that because I'm definitely at a deficit. I didn't
Yeah.
eat 4,000 calories today. Like I had only eaten lunch and then we went and got dinner. There's no way, I wasn't drinking queso. Like it ain't gonna
Yeah.
happen. And I mean, I'd love to drink queso, but that's why I'm in this situation. I'm just kidding. I and so, but it comes down to discipline. And if it's important, you'll make the time. And so Tuesday night, get done with dinner, go back to the hotel room, and I have some work I have to knock out. And I'm like, okay, I knocked out some work. I called Amanda, and we were talking. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go work out. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I was like, I gotta get done. She's like, okay. I was like, I'm gonna take a 30-minute nap because I was smoked. I mean, I was smoked. And I laid down in the hotel room. I put my phone on my chest with the alarm on, and the alarm went off. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm like, but okay. And I got up and
Yeah.
I met with Cody and Joe, and I'm glad I went and did it. And it comes back to this saying that Jocko told me when I was talking to him back in January 2020 is discipline is rooted in the truth that we tell ourselves. And if it's important, you'll make time. And could have been really easy for me to say, hey, I don't have time to work out tonight. Like yesterday, I was down in San Antonio, full day of work, San Antonio, drove back, got home around 9 o'clock, still had to unpack, do all the stuff, spend some time with my kids. We got 3 puppies. It's crazy. Our house is crazy. And oh yeah, we have 3 pit bull puppies. They're amazing. I'll send you a picture.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where it's really easy for you to be like, hey, I don't have time to do this. And instead of saying I don't have time, say it's not a priority to work out. It's not a priority to go do this with my kids. It's not a priority to take my wife out on a date. That changes things real quick. And you have to understand that if it's important, you'll make it happen. And so going back to what you said, you have to make it a core principle of yours, because if it's like one of your core principles, you'll do it. It's a non-negotiable. You have to figure out what your non-negotiables are. When I was in the SEAL teams, it was easy. I knew what my non-negotiables were. I was preparing for war. I mean, I had, and they're great people. I love my wife. I had girlfriends when I was in the SEAL teams that were awesome. They were really cool people, like really cool people. But then the moment they started to think that they were going to be more important than the SEAL teams, were going to take me away from doing the training and the preparation I needed to make, bye.
Bye.
Hope you have a great life. You're awesome. Be awesome somewhere else. Like I'm serious. Like I had some really cool girlfriends they're great people. I hope they're still great people. They were. Bye. Like you're not going to take away from what this is. And because that was a non-negotiable for me, because I was preparing for war, and like I could get my guys killed. I can make a mistake where I don't come home, or I come home but I'm in a casket. Like that's not an option.
But I think a lot of people will see that and they're like, oh, okay, well that makes sense because that's intense, and like your life and other people's lives are on the line. How can I do that on my day-to-day basis?
It's
But
literally
yeah.
It's the same mindset though. It doesn't have to be life and death for it to be important to you. Is being healthy important? That should be an absolute yes for everyone. We were doing this workshop yesterday, and one of the guys, we're talking like, what are you going to take more ownership over? And he said, my health. I need to take more ownership over my health. He goes, I want to be around to see my grandkids play. And he got super emotional. And the dude wasn't like crazy overweight. He was in his late 40s. You could tell he's just out of shape, and we talked afterwards, and he goes, because I shared with him my struggles of my testosterone levels and my hormone levels, and how I have to be on TRT and HRT for the rest of my life to have stuff regulated. And it's a struggle. And I had shared this with the group, and, he was talking to me. He's like, man, thank you for sharing that. Because I realized I had been making excuses for my health, and I want to be around. I want to be a healthy dad. I want to set that example to my kids. That's the thing. If you can look at things to where it's not about you, about other people, it helps you stay true to those things. My core beliefs, for my core principles, for what I was like a non-negotiable in the SEAL teams, I was at the end of that list. It wasn't about me. It was about my teammates. It was about the mission, about the SEAL teams, my nation. That's what was important. I was literally at the end, because I don't care if I die. Like I don't. I know where I'm going. I'm good to go with it. There's no like, I'm not like worried. And if it's God's time, it's God's time. So when you don't have to worry about dying, it takes a lot of stupid stress off your plate. And so it was always about my teammates, my teammates, my teammates, my teammates. And if you could do that for your business, it's about your company to support your customers, which supports, you take care of your customers. Guess what? That means that you have a business to support your people. You support your people, they support their families. You get to support your family. There's all these things. You have to find a way to tie it to somebody else. So it's not about you. It's, it's just, you can't have that where it's all on you type of mentality. I'm sorry, it's not all about you mentality.
Mm-hmm.
It is on you, but it's not about you. And I think when you can shift to that type of a focus and a mindset, it really helps you stay true to those things, because like Jocko said, discipline is rooted in the truth that we tell ourselves. And if it's important, you'll make time for it. So I think that was the big thing, is just understanding what those are. And they're going to shift and change. They are, and for me, if I don't work out, dude, my life sucks. Like, so I have to do something, because I'm not a good person if I'm not active.
Yeah.
I'm just not,
I would say, I would argue that most people are better versions of themselves. They just maybe haven't done it consistently enough to know that. But I can't really think of any downsides for someone being more physically active. And it doesn't mean, like, when people hear that, they think, oh, well, I gotta, do a jujitsu competition, or I gotta do a bodybuilding show. It's like, no, this is like, you could go to the gym 3 times a week, like, and go for a walk every day. Like, that's what we're talking about. Like, those types of things. And I think that when we're talking about that non-negotiable, or those non-negotiables, I think that a lot of people haven't even taken that time to really sit back and think about that in terms of, like, what does that mean to me? What does my life mean to other people? Like, all those, like, so having that conversation with yourself about, like, what are these actual things that I'm rooting my decisions in, like what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. Because if we don't know that, then it's really hard to have footing to make a good decision to move forward. If you're always like, and that's why people who are in athletics usually uh, they thrive, right? Because they have a goal, they know what they're doing. It's usually team based, even if it's an individual, it's still kind of like team related, right? So it's really easy when you have that singular focus. I would say that the military is similar. Like, it's like the focus is already there. Like, you don't have to, I mean, you can change how you achieve that result, but the result is there. Like, that's what you're aiming at. But I feel like in life, outside of that, outside of very specific goals at high levels, people can struggle, but it's like, you just have to create that. And then once you create that, then you can operate on that framework. But if that's not there, you're just going to kind of feel like you're floating around and you don't really know, like, how to guide your decisions. And then it just becomes really easy to slip, like, because it's not about the, like, oh, I didn't do a workout. It's not even about that, or like the calorie burn or the muscle building or whatever. It's more about, like, again, okay, am I somebody who holds these promises to myself? Is this how I view myself? Am I going to hold myself to this standard? And it's so easy. We all go through seasons. Like, I'm not, we all go through different seasons of what is important, what we have to make time for, and all that. So it's going to look different for everybody. And it might not be training for you, but just as an example, like, being physically active, I think, is a pillar that really makes everyone arguably better. Like there's no argument that
there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt. And that's part of Jocko's thing, is being disciplined, right? With your physical health, just doing something. And I hope whoever's listening really heard what you said. I hope they really heard what you said in regards to, it's about the commitment, fulfilling that commitment, being disciplined, is just doing something. Hey, go for an hour walk, right? Like, that's actually, like, if for you to commit an hour, that's a legitimate commitment to most people's lives. What's crazy is our society has gotten so messed up with physical activity that a 20-minute walk is considered exercise now. That's kind of crazy if you think about it. And so we got to get back on towards, like, doing stuff that's hard as well. The workouts that we do needs to push you. And I hope what you're hearing, if you're listening to this, or of course you're listening to this, but I hope you hear what I'm saying in regards to, it just needs to be hard for you. What is your hard? And that's why I signed up for that jiu-jitsu tournament like 3 weeks ago. And I did it this last weekend. I wasn't in the ideal situation to compete. I had 2 broken ribs. I had, a broken finger. I trained 3 to 4 days a month in jiu-jitsu because that's how busy I am. I'm on the road constantly. So signing up for an IBJJF open tournament where these guys are training legitimately for these was not ideal, but it was about making the commitment and being there, because my coach said, hey, we need people to sign up. And I'm like, cool. And when I signed up, he goes, all the black belts are like, oh, really? They didn't expect me to do it because they know all the stuff I have going on in my life. And it would have been easy for me just to make those excuses. And we can't do that. So you have to do things that are hard for you. And here's the deal. Take what I said. If legitimately, if a 20-minute walk is actually hard for you, then start there. Start there. But I think the physical aspects, like physical fitness, it has to be a pillar in my life. So I have my faith, physical fitness, and then for me, one thing I have to get better at is just being consistent with my reading. Right, I do read, but it's not as much as I should be, and I know that. And because I know when I'm reading, it's forcing me to detach from all the noise that's going on in the world, and it allows me to actually be a little more refreshed. That's why I love jujitsu, is because you can't get sucked into anything. You can't, right? You go to the gym, you can get sucked into your phone. I mean, I was working out last night in our garage, and I just like boom, 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 right? My phone's going off, and I'm like reading a text message. I'm trying to reply real quick before my next rep. I go to the gym, I set my phone down in my bag. I don't look at it until I'm done. It's a forced detachment. And so I think if you can force yourself to detach, it just helps you as a human.
Absolutely. And that's why doing those things, like we said, that's hard, is so important. Whether it's, for me, and I know, like, again, we're very similar, like mentally just always going, go, 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 go. So like for me, this year was a lot about detaching in different ways, like doing things that were hard, but hard more like mentally. So like doing meditation classes, doing float therapy, like journaling in the sauna, like that is not as taxing, maybe. I mean, I guess the sauna is kind of hard, but like that's not as physically demanding, right? But like cognitively, that's forcing me to do things that are it's more comfortable for me to work out for 2 hours than it is to sit with my thoughts for an hour in a float deprivation tank. You know what I mean? So it was like this year, a lot of time. It's amazing. We'll talk about that after. You need to do it.
I did it once. Do it
more than once to get to really get in there. But like that kind of stuff, like that was such a challenge, for me. So it was like this year I was like, I'm going to challenge myself, like to do those types of things that are much harder. Like physically, it's certainly not hard. But allowing myself to get to that place mentally is going to allow all these other things to like be in line, and then using physical fitness just in different ways. Because again, I was so used to training as an athlete. You just, I have one singular goal. Whereas now it's like, no, I'm trying to use this to be like a more like focused and like optimal functioning person. So a little bit different.
Well, you have to understand when it's time to elevate your game as an individual, and as you're growing as an individual, as a leader, as a business owner, you've got to just change the way you do things. It's just, it's part of it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things to kind of tie this all up. That's one of my favorite things about the muster, which again, I've talked about this a million times with people, but it's a 2-day leadership conference with JP, Jocko, Leif, all the instructors. It's phenomenal. It's the best run event that I've ever been to, which is why I've gone multiple years in a row because of that. But what I love about it is not only is it, it's exceptionally well run, it's very professional, the information is amazing, but there is all the other components are tied in, so like we do the PT in the morning. I mean, it's optional, but you should probably go. PT in the morning, right? Then we have the lectures, then there's like quality food, then there's interactions, then there's jujitsu, like all of these things together. So it's not just like, hey, we talk about this stuff and we don't actually do it. It's like it's an integration of all of the pillars of leadership put together. And it's like that is all very intentional. Like it's intentional that there's the workouts and that there's quality food and that there's social interaction and there's time for that. Like all of those things are making people better leaders. And that is why I think that's how it stands out so well too, is because of that. So yeah, I know, one more time, we're gonna plug the muster. Definitely save up and do it. I think
it's worth it. It's worth
so
it.
worth it.
I mean, the event's incredible. I went to the first one and I've spoken at every single one since then. And I still take pages of notes every single muster, just listening because you hear something different. And like you and I were talking about it, you're like, hey, I'm in a different place in my life every time I go.
Mhm.
And and that's the same thing for our individual FTXs that people can sign up for. And the individual FTXs are similar to Buster. It's 2 full days of running these scenarios. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. And we have people that have been to multiple individual FTXs
Mhm.
because they're like, I get something new, I implement those things, and it brings my business to the next level. We had a guy who he came to FTX 002 in San Diego, and he sent me a message. We stayed in contact over social media, and he sent me a message 9 months later. He's like, hey, I just want to give you some feedback from what I took away from the
Oh,
muster, what I've been implement I'm sorry, what I took away from the individual FTX, what I've been implementing into my business and my personal life. He goes, my business is up $6 million. He goes, so the return on the investment was incredible. I'm like, I would say
uh,
so.
yeah,
Holy
I would
shit.
definitely say.
But and the guy was being super humble. He's just like, these are the things that I implemented. This is what it did from this aspect of the business. He goes, I just want to give you this feedback so that you can pass this on to other people that are wondering, like, hey, should I do this? And he goes, I could have gone and not done anything with what I learned, and I'd still be in the same spot. And he goes, I wouldn't be hurting, but my business wouldn't be up $6 million. He goes, I'm able to be a better husband, a better father. I'm able to give more to my church and bless other people. He goes, I just want to say thank you for the lessons that you guys passed on and the tools that you gave us. And I was like, man, that's amazing. Like, to hear that testimony is incredible. And then we have other ones where we had a couple come to the individual FTX, and at the end of the FTX, the husband, and if you look at the husband, you're like, dude, he's a, I don't want to give up too much of his personal information. I mean, he's a big burly man, right? And he's just a big dude. And you just look at him, you're like, dude, that dude's a badass, right? He has like just
Mhm.
bare paw hands. Like, I don't have small hands. When I shook his hands, I'm like, oh, I have tiny baby hands right now. Like, my hands aren't like small, right? Like, and I shake his hand and I'm like, oh, little baby hands right now. Oh yeah. I mean, it was crazy. And I'm like, don't squeeze because you'll break my hand. And so him and his wife came to the FTX. And at the end of the FTX, he's given his key takeaway, and he just starts crying. And he goes, I realized that every single problem that I've had in my personal life, my business, and he looks at his wife and he just starts crying again. He goes, and our marriage is 100% my fault. He goes, and I've never seen that before. He goes, and these last 2 days showed me that everything has been my fault, but I also have the power to fix everything and I was just like, and like Jocko and I, like everyone's like super emotional, and Jocko and I like go to look at each other, and we can't make eye contact because if I see him looking somewhat emotional, I'm gonna lose it, right? And I'm just like, I can't do this. And it was just incredible. And she stands up, she's like, no, honey, she's like, this is my fault. And like they're like, I'm like, this is awesome, right? Like now they're arguing over, you know, over taking ownership, right? Instead of blaming
Hilarious.
everything.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and their business is still doing good and their marriage is great. And it's just really cool to like see those things and hear those things. And it comes down to like, you can have all the tools, you can have all the knowledge, you can have all the resources in front of you, but if you don't implement any of that, nothing's going to change. Knowledge isn't power. And I know you've heard this. Knowledge, people are like, oh, knowledge is power. Nope, it's not. It's the application of knowledge that makes you powerful. If you decide to put the knowledge that you have to use, that's why you should be reading, because it gives you more knowledge. That's why you should be putting yourself in vulnerable positions to challenge yourself so that you can learn. Right? I did that jiu-jitsu tournament. I lost my first match in the absolute open. So pissed off, so mad. I sat on a chair for 10 minutes, just furious with my performance because I don't like letting people down. And I had all my teammates there and my coaches there. And I don't like letting people down. And afterwards, I know like none of them were everyone was like, hey, man, that was awesome. I'm like, what, losing? Because losing is not awesome. They're like, no, you just being out there doing it. Right. And I'm like, Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Like on the inside, I'm like, I don't want to hear this right now, but they're so nice and kind, right? Like my
Yeah.
teammates I love every single one of them. So, just, but had I not done that tournament, I wouldn't have that experience. And now I get to take the experience of what I learned from that tournament and implement it into my training, into my regiment. And I can tell you my workouts since then have been fueled by the fact that my hand was not raised. And the times like last night, I didn't want to work out. Like getting back at 9 o'clock, doing everything with, the kids and the dogs and unpacking and all this stuff. Like, do you think I wanted to work out last night? No. But I remembered what it felt like not having my hand raised. And I remember what it felt like not being able to perform a certain move in that tournament because I wasn't physically able to. And that came down to me not being physically prepared. Ooh, that shit makes me
Yeah.
mad right now thinking about it. But like, and guess what? So I went and worked out last night, and it was
Yeah.
a great workout that I had. And so you have to take what life presents you and use it. Life gives you the opportunity to train every single day. Every single day we can train. It just depends if you want to find those ways.
And that's the perfect way to end this. This was so great. We could go on forever and ever. Probably have to do a part two because there was a lot of things that I still
I
want to
was
get
going to say,
into.
let's for sure do a part two.
Let's schedule a part two because there are so many other great things. But before we sign off, where can everybody find you? When's your book going to come? When's your book coming out?
Drop
No,
yeah in the link in bio. What is that? What they say? Yeah. So on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, it's all JP Dinnell. So at JPDINNELL. It's just like dinner, but with two L's at the end. So easy for people to remember.
dinner. I'm definitely going to change your name in my phone.
I hate you. I'm changing yours back then.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
We
No,
got each
so
other.
yeah, JP Dinnell, mostly active on Instagram just because it's just easier. I use it. It seems like it's for what I do, it's better. LinkedIn, I think it's just Jeremiah Dinnell on LinkedIn. And then I mean, big thing is I would be following Echelon Front for sure to see what we do. We have an online leadership training academy, Extreme Ownership Academy. So if you go to extremeownership.com, it should bring you to that, I believe. And well, you just have everything. We have a lot of different things linked out there.
Yeah.
So if you go to extremeownership.com, it'll bring you to all the stuff that we have. But yeah, and that was one of the things I was going to say earlier, and I'm glad we're talking about it now is, hey, as you're looking for an escalation, I mean, Extreme Ownership Academy, we have live trainings throughout the week. Right now during this time of the year, we just have one. I think we're going to increase it back up to two again. But you have access to all of our live trainings. They're all that you can rewatch. We have videos that you can watch, take tests, progress along with these different courses that we're working on getting the courses like accredited and all this other stuff. So it's pretty legitimate. And so as an individual, that's an amazing tool. And we have companies that actually buy those seats for their employees. It's like, cool. Hey, part of your workday is you join this live training. And like, so this Monday, I'm doing a live, it's Jocko and I doing the training. So this next coming Monday, Jocko and I are doing the live training. And let's say if you're on there, you could type in a question in the chat box. And, I read it to Jocko and he'd be like, all right, Lauren, where you at? Go ahead and come off mute. Let's talk about this. And so to have access to Jocko, Leif, Dave Burke, Jamie, all of our instructors is pretty incredible. We've had multiple people be like, hey, you guys really need to raise the prices on what you guys offer, but they want it to be accessible to multiple people because at the end of the day, our mission is to share the lessons that we learned in combat so that everybody across the world can implement them into their personal and professional lives. And that's what we want to do. So that's another thing that you can check out. But I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast. You're a badass. I love you, girl. You're a good friend. And I'm proud of the work that you're doing, the lives that you impact and change, and what you will continue to do as you build out your business. And I'm excited to watch you grow, and it's cool to be a part of this podcast. So thank you.
Oh, well, that was so touching. Okay, now I'm going to get emotional. All right. Well, we will come back for part 2 at some point in the future. And for more information, you guys know, for coaching and our services, you can visit teamlocofit.com. You can also check out our app at redefinehealthy.com as well for all information on that. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.